Let's get right into it. The Israeli military has withdrawn from the occupied West Bank city of Jenin and its refugee camp after a long week of military offensive. This was confirmed by the Palestinian news agency Wafa, which notes that the Israeli forces had pulled out of the city following a 10-day siege, but residents feared soldiers would return after temporarily moving to surrounding military checkpoints. The Israeli Defense Forces released a statement saying its forces killed 14 terrorists and arrested more than 30 suspects during the Jenin operation. According to the IDF, about 30 explosives were also destroyed, as well as an underground weapons stockpile located under a mosque and a laboratory for the production of explosives. The Israeli military launched the offensive in the north of the West Bank on August the 28th, targeting the cities of Jenin and Tulkarem, among other areas, in its largest assault on the occupied territory since the Second Intifada in the early 2000s. While Israel may have pulled out from Jenin, the destructions and casualties left behind still haunt civilians sheltering there. The mayor of Jenin, Nidal Obeidi, describes the raid as an earthquake. He says that Israeli bulldozers destroyed more than 20 kilometers of the city's road network. He adds that while clearing the rubble would take only days, repairs to the water and sewage networks damaged or destroyed would take months. He also notes that the city was completely cut off from water during the long week occupation by the Israeli forces. In the meantime, Israel's government spokesperson David Mencer has reiterated the country's plans to control the Philadelphia corridor, vowing not to let Hamas rearm. He made the comments during a press conference in the Israeli capital, Tel Aviv. His comments come after Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called for the demilitarization of Gaza, saying this can only be done if the Philadelphia corridor remains under firm control of Israel.
In a tunnel under the city of Rafah, where the whole world told us not to go in, the terrorist fiends hid our hostages. Our brave IDF tried to rescue him. After 11 months in captivity, Hamas murdered him. The Prime Minister last night apologized to their families that we did not manage to get to them in time to get them out. The Prime Minister said that we worked hard, very, very hard to get to them, and we were very close. The grief of these losses are intense here in Israel. The grief amongst this nation is all-consuming in its nature. As the Prime Minister said last night, Israel is experiencing days of horror, sorrow, and rage. We will not let Hamas rearm. I'll say that again. We will not let Hamas rearm. That should be obvious. So we simply have to control the corridor. It is always Hamas that walks away from a deal. Every single time, one way or another, through military means or through diplomacy, we will bring our people back home. We will ensure that Hamas is destroyed militarily and its governing capabilities. And we will ensure, of course, that Gaza can never be a threat to this country, while at the same time returning our displaced people in the north and in the south back to their homes, which is the right thing to do.
International affairs analyst Yinka Oyeniji joins us now for more. Yinka, great to see you again today.
Good evening. Hope you've had a great week.
That came to an end today. First, what do you make of the Israeli military's occupation in the West Bank, which was tagged a counter-terrorism operation?
So I was reflecting and I was thinking of what I was going to come here to say this evening, but I still sum it up in one phrase. I think that Hamas just walked into a trap, is what it is. Looking at it, can I look at it dispassionately, but understanding that we've had bombardments, the loss of lives, there's been so much terror going on. I don't think that this is any different from what the Israeli government planned. on the part of the Hamas. I'm sure that they thought it was an opportunity to be able to push for the realization of their Palestine state. I was shudder to think that they never thought that it will have immediate consequences. They were probably seeking help somewhere, hoping that there would be some strong support for them, but they are left alone at this time, and the Israeli government is not being held back. And it doesn't appear as if anything will hold Israel back at this time. So occupation, Israel will continue to do. And as long as we still don't have those hostages returned, there's no telling what level Israel is going to escalate this whole violent reaction as it is. This not in any way justifying what the Hamas did to provoke this chain of reactions, but Israel can simply not be stopped at this time.
And Israel, says its forces killed 14 terrorists, in quote, and arrested more than 30 suspects, also in quote, in Jenin during the operation. It also says it destroyed about 30 explosives. Do you think the Israelis might have achieved their goal there, and maybe that now there's no need to continue?
So what I'll say to you is that, like I said, Israel appears not to be answerable to anybody at this time. So like we said when this started, there's no third party that will be able to justify the Israeli actions at this time. It would have been good to be able to see the United Nations or the Security Council or even the development agency or aid agency saying we embark on this supposed search with the Israeli government and we can justify and verify the claims that the Israeli government is making. So it claims that these people are terrorists until they are brought before the courts and found to have committed terrorism. We cannot, by the words of a government, determine that some people are terrorists. There's absolutely no way, it's as simple as that we will be able to accept what Israel conceives this to be. What if they were innocent? What if these explosives were planted and all of that? And that indeed, Israel is walking on the threshold of committing war crimes itself, if we can put it that way, because as long as we do not have some third-party involvement to be able to verify and validate the claims of Israel, they are simply one-sided, and God knows how long that will continue for. So I can't sit here and say that I accept the claims of the Israeli government to say that they had occasioned violence on terrorists. Okay, it may have been different if Israeli government says these are the identities of those who've been taken hostage, and we all know that they have been missing. But while we embarked on the search, we actually did find them and we have brought them back. Without that, it's almost very difficult to continue to justify Israeli claims where it is the judge, it's the prosecutor in its own case.
And let's get your comments on the control of the Philadelphia corridor. Israel has accused Hamas of using it as a supply line for the armaments and for terror equipment. Why do you think that the Prime Minister, why do you think he's so insistent that Israel must control the Gaza-Egypt crossing?
Yeah, so the whole idea behind the historical feud between Israel and Hamas has always been over the control of territory. I mean, so it was on the days of the Bible, so it is in these days. It's always been about control of territories. And what the Israeli government has successfully done in the last few months is to be able to push Hamas further away from claims of land that they have also made over time. And so, again, it's just Israel all the way. There could be reactions from supporters of Hamas and the Palestinians, but they are not as strong as Israel is at this time. So as long as Israel is the same thing we see in Russia, just laying claims to territory is what it is. It's control, it's power, it's trying. Israel suddenly has found a reason to push its own agenda. That reason given to it by Hamas. And I shudder to think about how Hamas just fell into this trap by the Israeli government. So Hamas would lose far more than they could ever have thought that they would gain. So the violence will continue, the bombardments will continue, and Israeli government will seek to continue to find a way of justifying occupation of even areas that they may not have hitherto had claims to.
Right, and speaking of control, we know the Philadelphia corridor has also become, a point of contention. This time in the ceasefire talks, many wonder if perhaps the Prime Minister is sort of avoiding the ceasefire deal. Some analysts believe Mr. Netanyahu's demand is more related to keeping the war in Gaza going, even though it's withdrawing from certain areas. Do you agree?
In fact, I agree with you, and I hear the answer in your voice. And it's interesting that the rest of the world isn't saying anything about this. In Russia, the war started when Putin wanted to perpetuate himself in office. So the war started. In parts of Africa, old presidents, aged presidents, want their countries to be in perpetual turmoil so that they remain in office. Right now, Benjamin Netanyahu, a few months ago, was on his way out of government, and suddenly this attack came from the Hamas, and he's in office, and nobody is saying he should leave. Same thing may also be said for Ukraine, to say now we suddenly have a president who may have lost face, but being able to hold on to office because we'll say we are in war situation and we are, so to speak, looking for strong leaders to be able to stand for their country in times of war. So yes, everything is playing for Benjamin Netanyahu, and he is successfully by a reason. And I don't think that these are natural occurrences that are beyond man's control. I believe that Benjamin Netanyahu is the sole beneficiary of what is going on between the Israel and Hamas, because nobody is going to be talking about elections anymore. By November, we have a change in government in the United States, and the United States is an ally of Israel. So for whatever it is what Benjamin Netanyahu successfully bought himself another 2 to 5 years. So is he avoiding ceasefire? I say yes, he is definitely avoiding ceasefire, with an eye on what happens in the United States. Once the elections are over, then we'll wait to see the position that the United States will take, and that will determine whether Benjamin Netanyahu will remain in office. Is it in Benjamin Netanyahu's interest for this war to continue? Yes. He thinks it's in his interest as long as he holds on to office. So yes, I don't believe any ceasefire can happen that is not being promoted by third parties, as I have stated earlier. And the very first thing that we must ask for in order to have a ceasefire is for all those hostages to be returned. If Benjamin Netanyahu wants that to happen, I would be surprised. Then we can start to talk about a ceasefire.
International affairs analyst Yinka Oyiniji, thank you for your time today.
Thank you for having me.